The science of losing interest in people begins quietly, never with a loud dramatic shift or a sudden emotional explosion, but as the smallest flicker, a subtle peeling away beneath the surface where you still reply, you still care, you still show up. Yet something invisible starts to detach because it almost never begins with disappointment, but with predictability. At first, the person felt like an entire universe full of edges you didn't understand, contradictions that intrigued you, moods you wanted to decode, your brain alive inside their mystery. The possibility of who they might be more captivating than who they actually were. Yet real visceral interest isn't sustained by who someone is, but by what your brain doesn't fully understand yet. And eventually the unknown shrinks as every story gets repeated, every reaction becomes expected, every joke familiar. You start anticipating their thoughts before they speak them. The spark that once came from exploration dissolves into routine. People rarely lose interest because someone did something wrong, but because their brain stops searching. Interest dies when mystery dies. Attention fades when reward becomes predictable. Curiosity collapses when the chase ends. This is why the moment interest begins to fade isn't emotional, but neurological. Not about them, but about what your brain stops releasing in their presence. You don't lose interest because they changed, but because your brain did. Your brain is a gambler that doesn't want guaranteed rewards. It wants maybe. The highest dopamine spikes come not from satisfaction, but from anticipation, the thrill, the uncertainty, the possibility that something unforgettable might happen at any moment. This is why certain people feel magnetic, not because you actually like them that much, but because you like the feeling they create in your nervous system. Your brain loves unpredictability, emotional risk, inconsistent validation, the puzzle of trying to understand someone, the reward of earning closeness. This is why emotionally chaotic people feel intoxicating, not because they're better or deeper or more attractive, but because your brain responds to them like a slot machine you can't quite win. Every unexpected message, every shift in tone, every pullback in return hits like a chemical jackpot. The chase keeps your brain alive, while consistent, stable, emotionally available people leave your nervous system flat because there's no puzzle to solve, no timeline to decode, no reward to chase. When someone is too easy to understand, the brain registers it as low stimulation, safe and healthy, yes, but chemically flat. Human beings evolved to chase uncertainty, not stability, and that's why you keep losing interest in people who treat you well. Your dopamine is choosing for you. Your brain is wired to amplify value when access is limited. Scarcity intensifies desire while abundance dampens it. Reward prediction error is the gap between expectation and reality, and humans become obsessed with people who violate their predictions, who confuse them, who keep shifting the emotional atmosphere. You're not attracted to their personality, but to the inconsistency of their reward pattern. The same message feels completely different depending on timing. Instant reply feels, okay. Unpredictable reply feels exciting. Disappear in return feels hooking. It's biochemical, not personal. Interest is sustained by contrast, not connection. The best predictor of staying interested is how many times your brain has to recalibrate around them. Every recalibration triggers dopamine. Every confusion creates a spike. Every unexpected change reactivates the reward system. Unhealthy people trigger these spikes easily, while healthy people rarely do. That's why the best people for you often don't feel exciting. Your brain never gets shocked. It gets comfortable. And when comfort dominates, the brain shuts down pursuit chemicals, and people say the spark faded or I just got bored. But boredom is neurochemical withdrawal from the high of unpredictability, from the thrill of possibility, from the illusion that something exciting is always around the corner. Predictability is supposed to be comforting, but to your dopamine system, it's a slow death because it eliminates tension, and tension is what creates desire. Every time you know exactly what someone will say or how they'll react, you reduce the emotional charge between you. Relationships begin intensely and then drift because in the beginning, every interaction is new, every detail a discovery, every conversation an exploration, every moment charged. Then slowly the unknown dissolves, novelty plateaus, the pattern becomes clear, the person becomes familiar. And familiarity, while beautiful in theory, comes with the psychological cost that the more known someone becomes, the less stimulating they are. Your brain adapts, normalizes their presence, stops releasing dopamine, stops rewarding attention. Stability feels like suffocation not because the person suffocated you, but because the absence of novelty suffocated your dopamine. Familiarity is not the problem, your brain's addiction to. Stimulation is. There is a strange sadness when you no longer feel excited by someone you once adored. It feels like grief, guilt, losing a version of yourself. The most painful part is realizing how quickly your brain can detach from something that once felt so important. You question, why don't I feel the same? What changed? Was I ever really interested? Is something wrong with me? Why can't I maintain excitement with good people? But nothing is wrong with you. This is just how the brain works, losing. Interest is not moral failure or emotional immaturity or proof you're incapable of love. It's simply chemistry. Interest isn't sustained by kindness or consistency or compatibility or shared values or emotional safety. It's sustained by novelty, unpredictability, and tension, which inevitably fade as familiarity grows. The paradox is the people best for your long-term well-being are often the least stimulating. The ones who destabilize your nervous system feel the most exciting. The ones who create chaos feel the most addictive. Your nervous system isn't trying to hurt you, it's trying to keep you stimulated. But stimulation is not connection, and excitement is not compatibility. Human beings are chemically dependent on novelty. From evolution, novelty meant opportunity. New food, new allies, new threats, new mating possibilities. So the brain rewards exploration with dopamine. The more unfamiliar, the bigger the hit. Fast forward to now, and that system still runs your emotional life. New people feel magnetic, new relationships addictive, new behaviors intriguing, new messages exciting, new emotional patterns meaningful. Your brain lights up at anything unfamiliar, but novelty is temporary by design. The brain cannot sustain high dopamine forever. Everything exciting eventually becomes normal. Hedonic adaptation is brutal. You could meet the most fascinating person in the world, and over time the reward drops. Predictability rises, the charge evaporates, and you confuse the chemical crash for losing interest. You didn't lose interest, your brain lost novelty. This is why people chase new partners, new friendships, new emotional highs, not because they're immoral, but because the brain craves stimulation. The more exciting someone feels at the beginning, the harder the later crash. Dopamine seeks novelty, risk, chase, unpredictability, and collapses in stability, while oxytocin seeks bonding, safety, predictability, routine, long-term connection. These two systems cannot dominate simultaneously. Dopamine wants adventure, oxytocin wants home. Early stages are euphoric because dopamine runs the show. Butterflies, obsession, fantasies, intensity. And people call it chemistry, but it's just dopamine. Then months later, oxytocin tries to take over, wanting stability, consistency, predictable bond. But when oxytocin rises, dopamine falls, and interest feels like it's dying. Stable relationships feel boring, consistent people unexciting, routine suffocating, healthy partners less stimulating than toxic ones. Your brain isn't sabotaging you, it's switching operating systems. Dopamine is the spark, oxytocin the warmth. Most people mistake the transition for falling out of interest when it's actually shifting from excitement to connection. Many never stay long enough to experience oxytocin-based love. They exit during the dopamine crash, convinced something died, when something matured. But because it feels less intense, they assume it's wrong. We live in a world that romanticizes intensity. Real love is passion. Butterflies mean compatibility. Obsession means connection. So when someone calm, kind, stable, emotionally available enters your life, you feel almost nothing at first, not because they're wrong for you, but because your nervous system only registers intensity as meaning. Slow love feels empty because your brain isn't addicted to calm. Healthy relationships trigger oxytocin waves that feel subtle, peaceful conversations, stable affection, consistent presence, gentle curiosity, predictable support. No fireworks, just emotional safety. But emotional safety does not feel like a spark, it feels like home. Most people confuse lack of intensity with lack of interest and walk away from relationships that could heal them simply because the initial high didn't last. They're not uninterested, they're untrained, their nervous system calibrated for chaos. Comfort is dangerous because it feels good but kills excitement. When you're comfortable, you stop performing, overthinking, imagining possibilities, predicting reactions, trying to impress. Tension evaporates, and so does the thrill. Early interest is fueled by insecurity, fear of not being enough, fear they might leave. When comfort enters, fear dissolves and thrill dissolves. Comfort feels like disinterest because pursuit chemicals stop firing when the relationship becomes safe. Your brain isn't bored, it's relieved. But relief and excitement are opposite systems, so you misinterpret the shift as drifting or feelings changing when really you just stopped panicking. The most painful paradox is the people who feel safest excite you the least, and the ones who excite you the most destabilize you the worst. We are attracted to danger, bonded to safety, but confuse the two constantly. You chase who confuse you, ignore who understand you, romanticize chaos, underestimate stability, leave relationships that felt good, stay in toxic ones. Your brain chooses safety, your dopamine chooses stimulation, your heart gets caught in the middle. Interest dies not when the relationship weakens, but when pursuit chemicals fade. The heartbreak of adulthood is realizing what feels exciting isn't sustainable, what feels stable isn't stimulating, and what feels real often doesn't feel thrilling. At a deeper level, your attachment style is the invisible architect of who you want to avoid and lose interest in. Your nervous system learned early what love feels like, and unfortunately, love is often confused with the emotional conditions you adapted to. If love was inconsistent, you chase inconsistency. If overwhelming, you crave space. If conditional, you earn people. If calm, you value stability. Attraction isn't about the person, it's about the attachment blueprint. Your nervous system matches them. 2. That blueprint controls how quickly you attach, how easily you get bored, whether consistency feels comforting or suffocating, whether availability feels attractive or needy. Relationships feel like physics. Push-pull, distance, desire, availability, ambivalence. Avoidant people trigger unfinished emotional stories, reenacting unpredictable parents, unavailable caregiver situations where love had to be earned. They give validation in small doses, withdraw, suddenly create intermittent reinforcement. Never fully reject, but never fully commit, keep you chasing the next hit of closeness. You don't chase them because you want them, you chase because your inner child wants resolution. Anxiously attached people trigger the opposite fear. Fear of being truly seen, held, depended on. Their consistency, transparency, affection feel like pressure, vulnerability, demand intensity. Availability feels threatening only to people who learned love equals distance. Healthy people find availability comforting, wounded people find it threatening. Sometimes losing interest is identity. You outgrow the version of yourself that chose the relationship. You become more self-aware, values shift, healing trauma, boundaries, ambition, maturity, craving new environments, and the dynamic no longer aligns. You're not losing interest, you're evolving, and the relationship can't grow with you. We say we want peace, stability, mature connections, but when we get them, our nervous system whispers this feels off because it bonds through intensity, not safety. If you grew up around unpredictable affection, inconsistent attention, emotional highs, lows, unstable environments, love mixed with anxiety, you coded chaos as intimacy. Calm, consistent, stable people feel suspicious, boring, too easy. Interest doesn't die because the person is boring, it dies because your inner child feels confused. Most people aren't afraid of loving, they're afraid of being loved correctly, because proper love exposes insecurities, immaturity, fears, unworthiness. Healthy love leaves no hiding place, and that terrifies. When interest fades sometimes, it's because you can't maintain the version you wish you were. Their affection feels undeserved, acceptance, uncomfortable, love like exposure. Pulling away protects identity, not feelings. Being understood too easily threatens autonomy, control, privacy, because they can predict, call out, hold accountable, challenge. For people who survive by being unreadable, being understood feels like losing control, so you detach, label them too intense when it was fear of emotional privacy. Humans bond most intensely with people whose emotional world mirrors our own. Avoidant struggles with available, anxious, destabilized by calm, self-critical, distrust, praise, conflict, avoidant shut down around assertive. So you lose interest when emotional wavelengths don't align, not because they're wrong, but because mismatched languages feel like effort. Sometimes interest fades abruptly after therapy, heartbreak, recovery, spiritual awakening, career breakthroughs, trauma, healing, boundary setting, because you realize you were bonding over wounds, not values. Their instability now feels immature, draining. Their available love satisfying instead of scary. You outgrew the emotional infrastructure. Losing interest is often self-protection, your brain detecting vulnerability you're not ready for. They got too close, you relied too much, they mattered too much, triggered old wounds, saw you clearly, made you feel safe, vulnerable, required honesty, didn't fit trauma-driven preferences. Interest didn't fade, fear rose, and fear wins if unrecognized. You've been taught when someone is right for you, interest stays, steady desire, warm attention, fixed, but that has never been true in neuroscience, attachment psychology, or evolution. Losing interest is often the moment your nervous system lowers its guard and you mistake calm for emptiness. Peace is the most unfamiliar emotion for a survival-wired brain. Love begins with heightened alertness, analyzing texts, overthinking silences, scanning for meaning. Vigilance feels like connection, but it's hypervigilance dressed as romance. When someone becomes predictable, kind, consistent, safe, the body experiences drop in activation, not feelings, but arousal. You say, "I'm not excited anymore." But excitement was never love, it was threat response. The first stage of healthy attachment looks like boredom to an overstimulated mind, because consistency has no spikes, predictability, no dopamine loops, safety, no roller coasters. If you grew up with unpredictability, absence of chaos feels like absence of love. Your mind searches for old signals, and finding none creates narrative. I'm losing interest, when actually you're losing adrenaline addiction. True love isn't exciting in the beginning, it's confusing because it doesn't activate wounds. The brain prefers familiar discomfort over foreign safety. That's why you stay longer with people who hurt you, chase avoidant distance, available, crave passion, sabotage, consistency, confuse intensity with intimacy, chaos with chemistry, childhood emotional. Unpredictability teaches love is unstable affection, earned connection, conditional value, tied to performance, safety, temporary. So when someone gives stability, your body revolts because no blueprint for peace. You lose interest in people who see you too clearly because closeness collapses curated identity. Early stages intoxicating because built on imagination, controlled revelation, but intimacy removes performance, forces full imperfect self, and most haven't practiced loving themselves at that depth. So when someone tries, you feel exposed, unprepared, unworthy, fake, overwhelmed. We call it losing interest, but really you cannot receive love you do not believe you deserve. When someone is too available, it confronts self-esteem. Their belief in you highlights gap between how they see you and how you see yourself. Discomfort leads to labeling them the problem. Availability feels unattractive only to people who associate love with distance. Healthy find it comforting, wounded, threatening. You don't want chase, you want confirmation of worth in real time, intermittent reinforcement, addictive. If love always required effort, you don't trust love with ease. You think they don't know you well enough, or they're desperate, something wrong with them. People don't just choose me, you reject new emotional reality. I must work to be loved. Healthy people respond without games, communicate clearly, show interest without fear, give without manipulation, consistent without overthinking, direct about feelings. To anxious/avoidance systems, this feels overwhelming, but it's mature blueprint. You're used to attraction that destabilizes, not regulates. So healthy feel too much, unhealthy just right. It's conditioning, not chemistry. Interest tied to emotional effort. When effort disappears, interest disappears, not because person wrong, but brain doesn't recognize relationship, not built on survival mode. Healthy love feels unfamiliar, unfamiliar feels unsafe. Brain protects by switching off attraction itself. Defense, you detach when identity grows, shrinks, misunderstood, outdated, distorted, threatened. Evolving, unexpressed attraction is identity-based resonance. When resonance shifts, connection dissolves. You can deeply like someone and still feel interest draining because brain not designed to stay activated by same person indefinitely. Reward system built for novelty, surprise, uncertainty, predictability, lowers dopamine, overfamiliarity, reduces response, habituation, filters, repeated stimulation, emotional saturation from too much, too fast, overload system. Avoidant partners hold attention longer because intermittent reinforcement, strongest conditioning. Healthy, stable people feel calm, safe, steady, predictable, regulated, so less exciting at first. If you associate intensity with love, calmness feels empty, peace, boredom, safety, lack of chemistry, availability, low value, not because you don't want healthy, but reward system hasn't adapted. Losing interest is unhealed patterns, dopamine imbalance, identity shifts, not spark disappearing. sometimes detach because treat you too well, see potential you don't deserve, hold accountable, expect maturity, respect beyond self-image. Their care creates pressure, avoidance, withdrawal feels loss of interest, but really identity dissonance. Modern dating intensifies with micro-rewards, endless novelty, overstimulation. Real humans feel slow, predictable, normal brain, overstimulated elsewhere, understimulated in real connections. Dopamine burnout shortens attention, lowers patience, flattens emotional range, interest dies because identity shifts, reward adapts, emotional overexerts, brain normalizes consistent affection, dopamine calibrates attachment, needs change, future self clearer. Most falling out of love is mismatch between neurological state and relationship demands, attraction deeply biological. Losing interest isn't just about them, it's about version of you when connection began versus now. You evolve faster than relationship self. Image evolves, you shed old fears, desires, insecurities, habits, survival mechanisms. Person once fit perfectly no longer aligns, growth restructures attachment. You want different things, feel different needs, prioritize different values, speak different emotional languages, seek different connections. Person didn't lose value, you lost compatibility with past self. Growth creates clarity, emotional distance, sometimes peaceful. Breakups because timeline shifted, you didn't fail each other, you outgrew. Emotional molting, old skin no longer fits, conversations draining energy, mismatched values, misaligned chemistry, off needs clearer standards, higher, not picky, aligned. You grieve fantasy, potential, imagined future, emotional comfort, identity, tied, validation, hope, even if not fulfilling. You miss who you were when loved, how felt, attention, routine, safety, vulnerability, chosen, validation, but identity that created feeling gone. So relationship can't be revived like clothes outgrown, subconscious checklist. Reduced curiosity, anticipation, resonance, mental simulation, cognitive replay, care about impression, investment, mind closes tabs, quietly, interior disconnection before exterior behaviors. Most losing interest is subconscious neurological rebalancing. When dopamine cycles and hormonal bonds decrease, novelty fades, identity finalizes, fantasies dissolve, attachments weaken, lessons complete, mind signals. Emotional contract fulfilled, people think heartbreak, actually closure, internal closure before external. Separation, interest doesn't die, it evolves into self-awareness, clarity, alignment, wisdom, closure, peace. What feels like I don't care anymore is I've grown past this chapter. Every relationship mirror, every attraction lesson, every detachment growth, interest transforms. That felt like losing yourself is actually finding yourself again.